ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनम् कविभिरीडितम् कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलम् श्रीमदाततम् भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनम्. So the master and Vijay Goswami. So the conversation between the master and the Vijay Goswami is going on. And we found that Sri Ramakrishna is indicating that bhakti alone is enough for the attainment of spiritual realization. But the thing which is stressing, whether it is bhakti or jnana, the both can lead to the highest spiritual goal. But for both of them, the main criteria is the eradication of all sorts of attachment. As Sri Ramakrishna is indicating, that it is the worldliness that is the cause of all the bondage, our desires. So that's what we were discussing in the last class. Sri Ramakrishna was saying that one cannot see God if one has even the slightest trace of worldliness. Matchsticks, if damp, won't strike fire. Though you rub 1,000 of them against the matchbox, you only waste a heap of sticks. The mind soaked in worldliness is such a damp stick. So as we told that in the path of spiritual journey, we can never just row by standing on the two boats at once. Where is, as in the Hindi, that the couplet, the very oft quoted couplet is, Jahan Ram, tahan nahi kaam, jahan kaam, tahan nahi Ram. So these two cannot coexist. If God, the Rama, where he is, there cannot be any desire. Where the desire is, there cannot be any God. There cannot be Rama. So this is the be-all and all the spiritual journey, that we have to rise above this trace of worldliness. Even the little trace of worldliness shouldn't be there. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say a very nice thing, that to enter the thread in the needle of the eye, all the fibers of the thread should be moistened and made one-pointed. If even one thread is not just has been tagged together, has been moistened together, and it is just spreading out, however you may try, the thread cannot enter to the middle of the eye. In some other context, he gives this example. So these various threads of the various fibers of the thread are like the various worldly desires. They all have to be moistened by the devotion of God and made one-pointed. Then only it can pass through the eye of the needle. Passing through the eye of the needle means attaining the highest spiritual goal. So with the help of these examples, Sri Ramakrishna is indicating that it is the total lack of worldliness that alone can enter in the highest spiritual realization. So now we will continue with the subsequent portion of the conversation between Sri Ramakrishna and Vijay Goswami. Once Sri Radha said to her friends that she saw Krishna everywhere, both within and without. The friends answered why we don't see him at all. Are you delirious? Radha said, friends, paint your eyes with the collyrium of divine love, and then you will see him. So these are the very, very important philosophical aspect of bhakti. That paint your eyes with the collyrium of divine love. That when we really see the divine within and without, as if the divine is permeating the entire existence. As we told that in our spiritual journey, we try to understand the psychological aspect of our pursuit for bhakti. We are indicating again and again, it starts with the will, with the resolution. Along with the resolution, we adopt certain practices, repeat them again and again, and they as if create a path in the mind. Once the minds get wired, we develop devotion. Just to do it, we develop a love for it. That's how, by repeating all the so-called spiritual disciplines which has been prescribed, we develop love. Once the love is developed, our contemplation becomes spontaneous. It becomes something natural, habitual. And that's the real meditation. When my devotion has grown, then only my meditation is something which is spontaneous. Because the object of love, I never forget. I will find that in our life, whom we love, the mother's love for the child, that example we will give again and again, we will find that the mother will be always thinking of the child, whether she is in her work field or she is cooking for the child, whatever she is doing. A part of the mind is always engaged with the thought of the child. Why? Because she loves the child. So love makes the meditation spontaneous. Without love, there cannot be real meditation. Now, because of this devotion, this ripened devotion, what happens? As it becomes more and more intense, you will find in our life that when I am focused to something, other things starts falling off. When I am watching a match in the TV, someone calls me, I don't hear. What has happened? The sound is entering the ears, but the mind cannot register it because the mind is totally focused on the object of meditation. So the more we are focused because of devotion, the more the distractions start falling off. At last, it so happens, even the bodily feelings start falling off. I forget all the bodily feelings in the form of hunger, thirst. My mind becomes so intense. I forget about the existence of the body. But the last thing to fall off is the ego. The sense that I am this limited body-mind complex with which idea, with which concept, all my desires are connected. First, I have to think of myself as a limited. Then only the desires, hatred, everything comes. I like this, I like that, I don't like this. Who? This limited I, this petty I. So that is the last bit of our awareness with which the mind is always connected. From our very birth, we find it is always there. I never forget myself. Whatever I'm doing, I'm always aware of that limited ego. But when the mind becomes extremely focused, that ego also, the mind cannot register the ego. The ego also falls off. Sri Ramakrishna is giving that very nice example, as if I have created a hole in the wall of ego. Just imagine that there is a wall. I don't know what is on the other side of the wall. I start creating a hole, chiseling out a hole in that wall. And when the hole is complete, when the chiseling is complete, I peep through that hole and see that infinite expanse. So all these various meditation on the various forms and concepts of divinities are like creating hole in the wall of ego. With the flow I'm entering, at last the ego falls off. I've created a hole in the wall of ego. And now, as if I'm peeping through it, the ego has fallen. And now it takes us to the infinitude of the divinity. It is the mind which is not allowing the consciousness to be identified with itself. It is through the mind it is being projected as the world of name and form, and we are constantly moving out. The consciousness is moving out. Pratyak. This parak and pratyak. Pratyak is driving within, parak is outside, moving outside. Constantly we are moving outside, and we are totally engrossed with our engagement with this, what has been projected. By the time when the ego falls off, the ego, without the ego, the desires cannot be there, the distractions cannot be there. And the mind also, as if the chitta collapses for the time being. And as a result, what happens? That all the consciousness which is projecting through the mind to create this world of name and form, that as if gets absorbed within itself. The consciousness now is as if identified with itself. The consciousness. So what has happened when you have created a hole in the wall of the ego? You are relating to that infinite dimension of your spiritual awareness. Now, whatever hole I have created, that becomes the framework for my realization. If I make a circular hole, through that hole I am just peeping, I see the infinite expanse. And this circular hole becomes the framework through which I am relating to that infinite expanse. If it is a square, through that square hole, I am relating to that infinite expanse. So here in the spiritual journey, what we are doing, we are creating the whole with the help of this concept. The one who is a devotee of Krishna is constantly chiseling the concept of Krishna, its name, its form, its divine Leela, in the wall of ego. The one who is a devotee of Rama, he is doing the same thing. One is a devotee of Christ, he is doing the same thing. So all these various concepts of divinities with which I am constantly creating a whole. When the whole has been created, now I peep through it, as if I'm peeping through it, and I relate to that infinite spiritual dimension of my existence. And now what happens? The whole, the framework of the whole which I have created, that becomes for me the be-all and end-all of my perception. When I dive within, I see that. When I look out, that's the framework through which I relate to the entire existence. So I see that divinity, that infinitude, through that framework. It is within, it is without. So Sri Ramakrishna says that all these various paths are nothing but like chiseling a hole in the wall of ego, so that at last we relate to that infinitude of the divine dimension of our existence. That's a wonderful idea. Here you can find that if we keep our spiritual life limited only to the doctrines and dogmas, beliefs in the doctrines and dogmas, there can be variation. There are various ideas, the doctrines, various dogmas. It's not that the doctrines and dogmas are same. We will find the theology, the doctrine, the dogma is so much varied. But when it takes us to the realization, it speaks of unitary experience. There you will find all the mystics of all the religion meet there. The problem is with the mere believers, those who are just mere believers, who think religion is just believing, just having faith and just believing. There can be varied opinion. As we say that if someone has tasted the mango and he comes and describes the taste of mango to a group of people who have never tasted, what he says, that it is sweet and it has a very nice flavor. Now those who are hearing this, they have not tasted. They try to relate those words with their available fund of experience. They have not experienced the taste of mango. So they're trying to relate those words with their available fund of experience. So one starts saying that mango is as sweet as molasses because he has tasted molasses and he has heard it is sweet. So he's as sweet as molasses and it has a nice fragrance which finds expression as the flavor of rose. Someone says, no, it is as sweet as honey and it has the flavor which speaks of the fragrance of jasmine. So now see these varied opinions. All are trying to relate their available fund of experience with these words. And the varied, you will find opinions have been created. Now, among them, a few somehow really avail the mango, get the mango and taste it. What will happen? You'll find among those who have tasted, there is no more varied opinion. They all realize what he has said, that his words are true, and what it actually means, they only have realized. So you will find in the world of the spirituality, in all the religions, there is so much of variance as per the doctrines and dogmas are concerned. But if you go to the life of the mystics, somehow you will find they are speaking a language which is very much similar. I won't say exactly same, because somehow our own religious background influences our language. The language has a limitation. It is very difficult to relate your experience, which is unique. So language has been developed by the common experience of all. What I experience, what you experience, now I create a language to encode my experience in a language. If you have the similar fund of experience, you only can decode it. But a man of realization is something very rare. The experience which he has, if he tries to encode in a language, the others do not have that experience, so they cannot decode it. So that's how we find it is very difficult for them to express what they've realized. And for us to truly understand that also becomes very difficult. That's why it is but they're convinced they have realized something. That's why they say that what's the common thing of all the mystic realization? It is noetic. They are sure that they have realized something. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt. There's a tremendous conviction. But at the same time, it is ineffable. It is very difficult to describe. So that's why we find they're trying to describe through the framework through which they have went to that realization. There's no other way they can describe. So that's why they will say that who has made a hole in the wall of ego by meditating on Krishna, he will say Krishna is within me, and the same Krishna is as if everywhere, as in the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jaha Jaha Netra Pore, Taha Taha Krishna Spure. That wherever my eye falls, I see Krishna is as if popping up from there. So that becomes the experience of each and every mystic. They see God within and without. They have went to that realization. After coming back from that, they as if relate to this entire world as the manifestation of the divine and divine alone. So now you will understand that how it can happen only through that love for God, devotion for God, at last helped you to enter into a state of flow, which enabled you to get rid of all distractions, even the bodily feelings, at last to get rid of the ego, to create as if a hole in the wall of ego. And then you are peeping to that eternity through that framework and making you feel that's the framework which exists within and without. So now let us read those lines again. Once Sri Radha said to her friends that she saw Krishna everywhere, both within and without. The friends answered, why we don't see him at all? Are you delirious? Radha said, friends, paint your eyes with a collyrium of divine love, and then you will see him. It is said in a song of your Brahmo Samaj, O Lord, is it ever possible to know thee without love? However much one may perform worship and sacrifice, if the devotee but once feels this attachment and ecstatic love for God, this mature devotion and longing, then he sees God in both his aspects, with form and without form. So that's the thing. So when you really, that we were saying that, the distractions, your love of God, what it does first, the distractions falls off. The distractions falls off and your mind becomes ekagra. There is only one vritti in your mind. Actually, my mind is thinking, that only the activity of the mind only we see. We don't see the external world. When I see the red flower, the redness is in the mind. It's not outside there. The light falls on your eyes, and that light no more doesn't enter your brain or your mind. It's only a particular nerve impulse which is going and activating the color center. And the redness is actually projected from there to envelop the flower to give you a sense that the flower is red. So what it speaks of, what my mind projects that I see. For one who is intensely meditating, that what happens, his thought becomes so powerful, it gets converted into a vision. He does. At the very beginning, it is just like strong imagination in resulting in vision. Now you may say it is as something like the schizophrenic patient. The schizophrenic patient also, you will find that intense thought takes into an alternate state of existence. They see so many things. Then is a one who is a spiritual aspirant. He's also seeing these visions. He sees God with form. He sees. Then is it something as is equivalent to a schizophrenic patient? No. There's a difference. For a schizophrenic patient, he doesn't have to do a sadhana. Just in his normal or in a normal state of mind, because of some disease state, he goes to that state from where he starts hallucinating. But a devotee can easily distinguish between these two worlds. This world I am seeing, through my contemplation, I enter into another world, which is not same as this. So that's why you will find a schizophrenic patient is always confusing. It takes its hallucination to be real and tries to relate to it in this world. And that leads to suffering. That is not possible. But a devotee knows very well that this is the world here, and my God is only through the purity of my thought I've entered. That's a different. So this and this never mix, as we told previously, that as long as the desire is there, there cannot be God vision. So desire has fallen off. It is because of your spiritual practice, you have designed your mind to go to the, it is still imagination. It is still imagination, but this imagination is not making you hallucinate. That's one thing that you can easily relate to the different world. There's a very nice example in the life of Ramakrishna himself. Ramakrishna's nephew, Hriday, he used to serve Ramakrishna. Now one day, he's seeing Ramakrishna that always is in the spiritual divine inabration. Hriday also wanted that, why not me? If my uncle wants, he can bless me, I can also have visions. So he started, as he was serving him, so he was always with him. So now he started pestering him. So the uncle, please enable me to have those visions. Please bless me so that I can also have those visions. And Ramakrishna again and again tried to discourage him by saying, see, what you're doing, that itself is sufficient. You're serving me, you're serving as if a holy man. So know it for certain that itself is sufficient for you. It will enable you to evolve spiritually in its own pace, slowly. Don't think of realization immediately. But as he was pestering again and again, at last Ramakrishna told, okay, if mother wills, let you have vision. So as ego has fallen off, he never used to say, yes, I am blessing. He always will say like that. If mother wills, you will have vision. And now, the very next day, it was the dusk, when Sri Ramakrishna was going from his room towards the Panchavati, the grove, where he used to do his sadhana. He was going, and Hriday was following him. And it was already dark, and suddenly Hriday saw that his uncle, who is just walking in front of him, his body is full of light. He was a bit surprised. He looked towards him. He found his body is also full of light. It's not made of flesh and bones. It is just illumined. And then he saw neither his feet nor Ramakrishna's feet is touching the ground, as if they're flying over the ground. And seeing that, Hriday was so ecstatic, he started shouting at the top of his voice, oh, uncle, what are we doing here? Come, let us go and just bless the world, inspire the world, preach the world. We are all gods. We are not ordinary beings. And immediately Ramakrishna turned around and told, please don't shout, please keep quiet. But Hriday was so ecstatic, he continued shouting. And Ramakrishna came and just touched him, told that you scoundrel, you're just shouting. And he just touched him, and all his visions vanished. And now Hriday was pitiable. Oh, uncle, why you took away this realization from me? And then Ramakrishna told a very interesting thing. I have such visions throughout the day, day in and day out. I don't make such a turmoil. With this little vision, you have started making such a turmoil. It will create just a noise. These people won't understand. If they just suddenly think you are a great person, they will try to create a sect around you. That's what happened with all this, all these sects. And it will be a diversion. It is just creating a noise. So now you will understand that when you are going through the spiritual journey, gradually, you develop the capacity to distinguish between these two. The true realization, we are going to certain world of this, as if alternative consciousness. It is different world than this. So you don't mix it up and create unnecessary noise. That's first thing. And second, in a schizophrenia case, it's really hallucination. All the interactions which is having with all these imaginary figures is in no way reflects the reality. But when Ramakrishna sees in his vision that mother is saying, Naren will teach the world, when he says that Naren is going to teach the world, Naren Shikkha Dibe, Naren thought that Sri Ramakrishna is a bit infatuated, he loves him so much, that's why he's speaking all those nonsense. When Ramakrishna told that Naren has that what Keshav, in those days Keshav Chandra Sen, the leader of the Brahma Samaj, a very powerful man, a very influential man, thousands of people will come to hear his lectures. He was considered a real erudite scholar, a learner, an orator. And now Sri Ramakrishna is to compare Naren. At that time, he was just a college student, a young boy. No one knows him. He will compare Naren with Keshav and say, if Keshav has 1 unit of power, Naren has similar 18 units of power. And when Ramakrishna used to say that, Naren will come and as if reprimand Ramakrishna. Naren will come and reprimand and say, why you speak all those things? What people will think? They will think you are a bit infatuated about me and you speak all this nonsense. And again, Sri Ramakrishna coolly will say that mother has shown me. What can I do? And just see whatever he is saying, it is as if prophetic, it is coming true. If it is a hallucination, can it be true? No. So what it speaks of, that when through this your spiritual practice, you are having these visions, what is happening? Your ego is obliterating. Now, ego is the cause of all our biases, and the bias limits our vision. So many things we also can see, but we cannot see. Our visions get limited. Why? Because of the bias. In Vedanta, they give a very nice example. Suppose there is a stump, a tree which has fallen, only the stump is remaining in the corner of a park. It's a stump. Now, in the dusk, it's a park, on the corner of that stump is there. In the dusk, suppose a thief is running away from the police, is trying to escape. And from a distance, he sees that stump. He thinks it is the police. The police is in search of the thief. He's searching. And from a distance, the police sees the stump. He thinks it is the thief. See, as per the bias, your vision is getting distorted. A small child was playing in the park with other children. Now it's dusk. He has to go back home. He knows that his mother is waiting nearby somewhere for him to take him back to home. From a distance, the child sees the stump, thinks the stump to be the mother. The mother sees the stump from a distance, thinks it to be the child. And there was one lover who was waiting for the beloved. And from a distance, he thinks it's the beloved. So what it speaks, our biases distorts our vision. It never allows us to see the thing as it is. The more the bias falls off, your vision becomes all encompassing, as if you can see what is beyond. And that makes one prophetic. Even in the life of Swamiji, when he was going through the various countries in the West, all his disciples were praising the Western civilization. See how flourished this Western civilization is. Swamiji was saying, I am seeing that the entire Europe is sitting on the tip of a volcano to explode anytime. Why? He saw that all this, this development, this so-called pomp and glory of the West came from colonialism. And there was a race for this getting colonies. These various European countries, they were at fight with each other that how can you have colonies, and that entails in your wealth. And this is creating a tension within within the European societies. And this is the tension which is going to explode. No one could realize that. Swami is saying when he was traveling that I see that entire Europe is sitting on the tip of the volcano to explode anytime. He passed away in 1902, and 2 world wars, one after the other. That's the history shows. From where that prophetic vision comes? From the lack of bias. That when I belong to a particular country, my love for the country makes my vision limited. I cannot see. But if you are prophetic, where all those bias doesn't work, you can see the picture very clearly. And a devotee has already created a framework of the divine that is maybe still an imagination. But that imagination is helping to get rid of the ego. For the schizophrenic, it is just the opposite. That imagination is as real as this world. You will find they're just standing and talking to some person as if trying to relate to him. He's of this world. The ego has not actually fallen off. The ego has become more concentrated. So much concentrated that it makes him to forget the entire world, isolate and relate with his limited ego. So all those visions are full of distortions. There is nothing which is correct about it. But here, still it is an imagination, but the distortions has fallen off because the ego is annihilated. He's relating to a much more, this broader reality. The more the ego falls off, the vision is myopic. When the ego falls off, it becomes broadened. And they can see what's there. So seeing Naren, he can see that what's really going to happen. And he's seeing through the framework of the object of his meditation, the mother. He's conversing with the mother. It speaks of, then is it an imagination? Yes, still it's an imagination. I will say you have started chiseling. The chiseling has taken the form of the image, but yet the whole is yet to be formed. That's the imagination. But at last, when the whole is formed, now you can see that infinite expanse. So from the form, you're going to the formless. Once the chiseling is complete, this framework takes you to that infinitude. So God can be seen both with form as well as the formless aspect. Why with form still we call it God? Still chiseling is not complete? Because the more the ego falls off, the more the divine consciousness dawns in us. The divine consciousness is nothing but the collective mind, which is finding expression as the individual mind. To give an example, take the internet. So much of knowledge I can have from there. That speaks of the collective mind. Everything has been uploaded by all the entire humanity. It is there. Now I create my world by downloading only the things which are of my interest. That becomes my limited world. But that if I had no bias, if I don't have to I have download specific things, then I also can relate to this entire anything, whatever I want, immediately I can relate to that. So the more the bias falls off, the more you can relate to this collective mind, and that is the God, the collective mind. So though still you're in the imagination, but as the ego is falling off, you're relating to the God in its aspect, in the form, in the aspect of its form. And when that ego is annihilated, first it is attenuated, and then at last it is annihilated. Then you are relating to that formless aspect. You're going to that. So just see with devotion, it takes you to this entire gamut of the spiritual journey, as if like you are climbing the ladder. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. If the devotee but once feels the attachment and ecstatic love for God, this mature devotion and longing, then he sees God in both his aspects, with form, with that it starts, takes him to the without form. Even in the Upanishads, they speak that it is just like a fish swimming from one bank to the other, from the form to the formless. And again, coming back to the form, is just the way the fish plays that way. It goes swims from one bank to the other. So that way, an advanced spiritual, an aspirant who has went to that realization, he goes on as if swimming from this bank of this phenomenon to the bank of the noumenon, to be beyond the phenomenal existence. So that's the thing with form to formless. In a very simple way, we can say, when your mind is ekagra, it is having only one vritti, you see your ishta, but mind cannot stay in one vritti, it cannot stay. Why? Because mind means jumping from thought to thought. If you can really keep it in one thought, the mind collapses. So what happens? From thought, you go to the state of thoughtlessness. But when you go, in the beginning, what happens? My mind, though, has gone to the state of thoughtlessness, but the subconscious mind is filled with that thought of God. So easily, it comes up as a bubble and breaks the state of thoughtlessness. So unless I totally clear off the subconscious mind from the Ishtavritti by practicing more and more thoughtlessness, I will remain in the domain of the thought of God. Though now and again I'm going to the state of thoughtlessness, again I come back. That see, you will understand it with our present state of mind. That now just the opposite happens. What? That by lot of practice, most probably for a short time, I can go to a state of ekagra, focus. And then what happens? My subconscious mind is full of distractive thoughts. They come and break this state of this state of one-pointedness. That's what happens at present. But when you have cleansed your mind from all the distractions and the subconscious mind is now full of one thought, now what happens? Now and then you will be going to the state of thoughtlessness. But now your subconscious mind is full of that one thought. That as a bubble comes and breaks the state of thoughtlessness, again bringing you to the world of phenomenon. But there is a vast difference. It cannot go back to the world of distraction because your ekavritti, the one thought of God, has already cleansed your mind from the distractions. So now either you will be in the world of phenomenon where you see everything, where you see everywhere the form of the divine, or it takes you to the state of formlessness. So you will be just like a pendulum swinging from the form to the formlessness. So that's the state which Sri Ramakrishna, from his own life experience, is speaking. You'll find in his life that just a simple song, a simple suggestion, immediately will take him to the state of that samadhi. And again, it is the name of God which helps him to come back from there. So that's the thing which we find in the life of Ramakrishna. With the help of the name of God, he's going into the state of samadhi and again coming back from that state, again with the name of the help of God. So that's the state which Sri Ramakrishna, from his own life experience, is speaking of, that he can be realized in both his aspects, with form and without form. This ekagrata is taking to the state of nirodha. This ekagra to the state from one thought to thoughtlessness and again back. So that's the aspect which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of. Vijay, how can one see God? Master, one cannot see God without the purity of heart. Through attachment to woman and gold, the mind has become stained, covered with dirt, as it were. A magnet cannot attract a needle if the needle is covered with mud. Wash away the mud and the magnet will draw it. Likewise, the dirt of the mind can be washed away with the tears of our eyes. This stain is removed if one sheds tears of repentance and says, "O God, I shall never again do such a thing." Thereupon, God, who is like the magnet, draws to himself the mind, which is like the needle. Then the devotee goes into samadhi and obtains the vision of God. These are very wonderful ideas, that to get rid of that ego, which is the be-all and end all of a spiritual journey, The moment I get rid of the ego, immediately it takes me to the spiritual realization. Now, to get rid of the ego, there can be two ways. One is assertion. What's the assertion? That I am a devotee of God, or I am the self. I am not this limited I. I am the self. Or another way, if I find that my life is already tainted with so many wrongdoings, to think that I am one with divine is very difficult. Then what I can think, God, you alone are. I am nothing. I am just an insignificant thing. It is your grace that alone can wash me. So here is a question of negation, that I am nothing. I'm insignificant. I'm nothing. Please come and drench me with your love. Drench me with your presence, with your divine presence. So this one is the way of assertion. I am Brahman, I am Atman, or even I am in eternal companionship with divine. I am a pure being. So God is eternal. I am also eternal. I am in eternal association with him. That can be one way, thinking, asserting yourself. Another is through repentance, washing out your ego totally. See, we find a very interesting thing that we find Swami Vivekananda, that he is as if roaring like a lion. He's called the Lion of Vedanta. In his lectures, we find that's constantly speaking of strength. And another disciple of Ramakrishna, his name was Durgacharan Nag Mohashar. He was a very humble soul. He was a married person. He had no children. Though he was married, but he never led a worldly life. But his approach to the divine was totally different. That I am nothing. I am an ordinary being, small, very small. God alone is. I am nothing. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Nahang tuhutu. Whenever anyone is to say Aham Brahmasmi, that I am Brahman, Ramakrishna immediately will contradict by saying Nahang tuhutu. Na aham. I am nothing. You alone exist. One is assertion, one is negation. But both are the way to get rid of the ego. Seeing these two approaches, Girish Chandra Ghosh, he was a special novelist in those times. He was a dramatist, a novelist, and he was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. His life was transformed by the grace of Ramakrishna. So this Girish was a very literary person. So he has a very poetic way of expressing things. So seeing these two opposite things, these two opposite lives, one Swami Vivekananda, who is always asserting, he's the lion of Vedanta, roaring as if that Aham Brahmasmi, I am the absolute. And the other, I am nothing. Oh God, you are everything. It is you who are as if existing in me. I am nothing. That I am a very small creature. I by myself cannot, as such, proceed in the path of the spiritual journey. Come and bless me, cleanse me, wash me. So these two approaches, and this Girish is giving a very nice example, that the bondage of Maya, the bondage of ignorance, couldn't bind Naren as well as Durgacharan Nag. They couldn't bind. Why? Because when the Maya, the bondage of ignorance, came with its net to bind Naren, he became bigger than the net. The more the bigger the net, the Naren is becoming bigger than that. So how can he, but the net becomes small compared to Naren's assertion that I am God. And for Durgacharan, it is just the opposite, that Maya couldn't bind him, that he became so small that he passed through the whole of the net of this ignorance. He passed through that. It was so small. So these are the two approaches. So this, for the person who is totally involved in this world, they find that it is so difficult to uplift spiritually. We get entangled with all the worldly ways of life. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna is giving this nice example. That as if there is soil on the needle, and with water you wash it, and then the magnet will attract it. As long as the soil is there, the magnet won't attract it. So wash the soil with the tears of your repentance. Know that it is you are an insignificant thing. God alone can save you. With that idea, just have that repentance, wash off all your sins. So that's the thing we find Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. One cannot see God without purity of heart. And how to attain that purity? That a magnet cannot attract a needle if the needle is covered with mud. Wash away the mud and the magnet will draw it. Likewise, the dirt of the mind can be washed away with the tears of our eyes. This stain is removed if one sheds tears of repentance and says, "Oh God, I shall never again do such a thing." Thereupon, God, who is like the magnet, draws to himself the mind, which is like the needle. Then the devotee goes into samadhi and obtains the vision of God. God's grace is the ultimate help. You cannot try you may try thousands of times, but nothing can be achieved without God's grace. One cannot see God without his grace. Is it an easy thing to receive the grace of God? One must altogether renounce egotism. So here comes. One cannot see God as long as one feels, "I am the doer." So these are very, very subtle spiritual thoughts that as long as the ego is there, you feel, "I am the doer." And as long as you feel I'm the doer, you cannot, as such, go to the spiritual realization. What it speaks of, as long as I have the ego, I am as if clinging to this tree of samsara, tree of life. If I consider the life as a tree, as long as I'm ego, the ego, whatever the ego is doing, I want this, I want that, that's why I am doing such and such action. All this speaks of clinging to the branch of the tree called worldliness. And as long as I'm clinging, I cannot, as such, realize the spiritual dimension of my existence. To this, let us consider this example in this way. That suppose a man is holding to the branch of a tree, sitting there holding the branch of the tree. Now to fall, does he need any effort? There's no effort required to fall. He just have to release the hold and the gravity will pull him down, isn't it? There's no as such effort required for that man to fall. He just have to leave the hold. Similarly, grace is always working on us, on every one of us. But we are holding with our ego to this world of samsara, to this tree of samsara. If we release that hold, immediately the grace will make us one with our divine existence, with our divine dimension. To release this hold, actually, all our spiritual practices to release this hold. How long the ego works? As long as I really feel that I can do. In spiritual life, all our spiritual endeavors actually have a negative way of acting. It's not that really with my attempt I can get it. With my attempt, at last, a sense should come that nothing is happening. I am almost helpless. And when you feel that helplessness, and then the true resignation comes. Now, when I say I'm resigned to the divine, it is just mere word. But a man who has practiced, really intensely practiced, and found in no way he can knock to the door of the divinity, nothing is opening up. A sense of helplessness comes. And then he says, "God, it is not possible by my effort. It is you who have to come and uplift me." So when that resignation comes, you have as if loosened the hold, and then you find realization comes suddenly. You'll find even in our spiritual life, to give an example, that those who meditate regularly, out of habit, they meditate regularly. At the beginning, when they sit for meditation, there's an expectation. Oh, today I'm sitting for meditation. I know that my aim is to calm my mind. I take the resolution, I will calm my mind. Let me sit for meditation. And I find it so difficult, it doesn't happen. But still, most probably I have been instructed to practice the spiritual disciplines. Out of habit, I go on practicing every day. And it has become a habit. Most probably out of habit, I just sit for meditation without any expectation. And suddenly I find my mind is very calm. And it has entered a state of tranquility. I am ecstatic, I'm joyous, I'm so happy. And immediately I feel, oh, this is the state I have achieved. From tomorrow, I am going to get it regularly. And next day you sit for meditation, again you find you're in the same state. That tranquility which you attained suddenly in the previous day, it's no more there. Again, the mind is distracted. What has happened? As long as the expectation is there, I have to achieve this with my effort, I have to do this. The mind cannot go beyond the state of distraction. You're holding because you're holding on to something. One day you sat for meditation without any expectation, as for habit. You sat, most probably unknowingly, a state of this letting go came, a state of resignation came unknowingly. As out of habit, you sat, and that as you release the hold a bit, suddenly it took you to a state of tranquility. And now again you get a resolution. The moment you get a tranquility, oh, today I got it. Now this is the thing I'm going to get every day. So that expectation again grows. And you find again the same thing. You don't achieve that state of tranquility again the next day. So this vacillation has to go on till we get so much tired at last. We say, no, nothing is happening by me. Oh God, you have to help me out. And you can truly resign. And then it will take us, just the way I leave the hold of the tree, the gravity pulls me down. I release the hold of my ego, and it takes me to the divine realization immediately. So there's so many ways to understand this, how that at last the divine relation happens. So it is a way, in a negative way it happens, not that with my effort. Effort is required, but that effort should at last take me to a state where I have to resign. A state of helplessness should come. And from that, the sense of resignation should come. Sri Ramakrishna, in some other context, is giving a very nice allegory that a bird was sitting on the mast of a ship. The ship was in the deep waters of the ocean. Now the bird felt like flying to the shores. So it flew to the east, couldn't find any shore, came back, took a little rest on the mast. And again, he got back its energy. Now it flew to the west, couldn't find any shore. Again came back. He was tired. The bird was tired. It came and again sat on the mast, took a little rest, went to the north, to the south, in all directions. Couldn't find any shore. At last it was totally tired. Came and sat on the mast silently with the idea, let the ship take me where it wants to take. So this is the idea of resignation. When that resignation comes, your effort helps you to develop that resignation. When the resignation comes, then in a flash, the ego falls off, taking you to that realization. That's why you'll find in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan is speaking of all the yogas, Jnana, Yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, through all the chapters, to speak of Sharanagati, resignation, only in the last chapter, the 18th chapter. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam. It comes in the 18th chapter, last chapter. Then why he spoke of all those things? That resignation is just not a mere word that someone says be resigned to divine and I say I am resigned to divine. No, that resignation doesn't come. It is just a mere word. It is ativada. You are speaking something which you have not realized. Your speech is transcending your feelings. It has to come through all those practices. And then that true resignation comes. The ego falls off. Ego is like the wall. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the bliss of God's grace is always blowing, but it gets obstructed by the wall of ego. Once it falls off, that grace is going to drench us all. So all our spiritual journey is actually to dissolve that ego. So negatively it acts. All our spiritual endeavor at last helps us to get rid of the ego, and we release our hold, and the grace immediately acts upon us. It was always there. But because of our hold, it couldn't just take us to the divine dimension of our existence. Just the gravitation is always there. A man who is holding to the branch, that the gravity cannot pull him down. He has to release the hold, and then it pulls us down. The same thing happens in the spiritual journey. The moment we release the hold of our ego, the grace is always there. It immediately takes us to the domain of spiritual realization. So that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating when he's saying it's after all God's grace. So it's a wonderful idea we get here, that when we listen of God's grace, we think I have to do nothing. If God wills, by his grace, everything is going to happen. That's not the idea. To realize God's grace, I have to work out at last to have that real sense of helplessness. And then the ego falls off, and then only the God's grace, which is always working. Otherwise, if God's grace becomes conditional, how can God be biased? He's beyond all bias. How can it be? His love is unconditional. It is there for all. It is only because we are holding to the ego. It's not acting on us. We release the hold. It's unconditional. It's just. So all our spiritual practice is just like unfurling the sail of the boat. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the wind of grace is always blowing. One who has unfurled the sail of his boat, he only can avail the wind, take it to his advantage, and flow across this world, of this river of worldliness. So what's the idea? This all the spiritual practicing is just like unfurling the sail. The grace, the wind of grace is always blowing. That alone can take us to the other shore of our existence. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating when he's speaking of grace. One may try thousands of times. So we may try, but nothing can be achieved without God's grace. So this is very interesting. Listening to this sentence, if we don't understand its proper sense, we will think, oh, then there is no need to try that 1,000 times. Let us just simply sit and wait for the God's grace. No, we have to try. And at last, that real resignation will come through all those attempts. We'll find that my power is not sufficient. It is the divine who has to uplift me. And then the real resignation comes. You release the hold of your ego, and then the grace works. One cannot see God without his grace. Is it an easy thing to receive the grace of God? One must altogether renounce egotism. So that speaks of the practice leading you to the denunciation of egotism. One cannot see God as long as one feels I am the doer. This is a very, very subtle idea. That's why we say Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. When you're reading, even the one who is reading for the first time, he will make an idea. He will think these words are so simple, are easy. What's there in it? He will also make an idea. But as we start progressing in your spiritual life, these layers of meaning will open up. You will find that these meanings are something more deeper, more subtle. And that's the beauty of the gospel. No one feels I haven't understood anything. Everyone understands, but that level of understanding becomes deeper and deeper as you go on reading the gospel and as you progress in your spiritual journey. Just with one allegory, that there is a wonderful synthesis of Purushakara, of endeavor, and grace, kripa. These two has to go hand in hand. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the example of two farmers. The two farmers, one farmer is a traditional farmer. His father, forefather, all were farmers. And he has learned from his family tradition. What? That never listen to the weather forecast. At particular time of the year, please plow the land. Don't listen to the forecast. The other farmer, by choice, he became a farmer, and he thought that he's an intelligent person. Well, why should I plow the land if the forecast is this year it is going to be drought? There's no rain. So the traditional farmer plows, this is called Khandani Chasha. He plows the land without listening to the forecast. The other farmer, he has listened to the forecast and he doesn't plow the land. And now suddenly the rain comes, proving the forecast to be false. Suddenly the rain comes. Who is going to get the benefit? The one who has plowed the land. The one who has not plowed the land is not going to get the benefit. So what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, when the rain comes, when actually the grace is going to dawn in our life, we don't know. It may come anytime. But are we prepared? If through my actions, I've already plowed, I've prepared the field, I will get the benefit of the grace. The one who has not prepared, he's not going to get the benefit of the grace. That's the idea we find even in the Bible, the Jesus story of the of the groom and the bridesmaids. So the bridesmaids were waiting for the groom to come. So all were waiting, and one fell asleep. So when he will come, no one knew. So all were just waiting, and one fell asleep. The one who fell asleep, he couldn't see when the groom came. It's a very simple story, but the same idea, that unless you are awake, you have already done your part. When the grace comes, it is so unpredictable. We don't know. We cannot say that today it is going to happen, tomorrow it's going to happen. So many factors has to all come and coalesce, has to work together to make it possible. We don't know. But unless I am prepared for it, I am ready for it, even when the grace comes, it won't in any way going to help me out. It is not going to overhaul my this is called limited personality. It is not going to in any way change my life, transform me. So I have to do my part. So by my part, by constantly working on my spiritual journey, how it will help? At last, it will help me to eradicate the ego. With my effort, nothing is going to happen. Then the real resignation will come. We will really depend on the divine with total resignation. And then the grace is bound to act on us, to taking us to the spiritual realization. So that's the wonderful idea which we find in these words of Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna's this idea of this grace only works when when I will lose the sense of the doer. We can eradicate the ego. He will explain with the help of few more examples that we will again take up in the next class. With this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.